Hi there, I'm Phil, the Practical Gardener. Most of my videos that I provide or upload are specific tips about an aspect of your gardening that you can learn and improve. However, this particular one is actually just an introduction to myself, my life through gardening. I do have a related tip, 0.0, which is about my approach to gardening, my principles that I apply, and what I mean by practical in the context of my gardening. So you might like to look at that one, and also of course if you subscribe and press the like button, then you'll be sure to see my tips as they become available. When I was young, my parents had a farm, and even as a 5-year-old I had a little garden where I grew vegetables, and also I would take cuttings of geraniums from people's gardens with their permission of course, and I would plant them and grow my little garden. So I started the gardening bug from a very young age. And you can see from the photograph, that's me in the cowboy outfit, that my parents were also clean gardeners, and my grandparents and other relations to mine, so I guess it's in my blood. When I was at university and living in a student flat, I had a garden there. So again I had vegetables, and as you can see from the photograph, I had a cottage garden and a lot more here than I do today. My first degree there was in liberal arts, and I did include a degree of art history in that, and I became quite enamoured with the concept of aesthetic that we find in classical works of arts, etc. And I think that those same concepts and principles can be applied to our landscaping and gardening generally. So it's something that has always interested me. When I travel overseas, I like to visit galleries, and I try and learn from the artworks. After this, I spent 7 years working for municipal authorities as a horticultural officer. I was responsible for parks, flower beds, shrubs and trees and maintenance, and I learned a lot about ornamental gardening, that is, how to develop and maintain a garden in the park context. At that time I did my next qualification, which was a degree in horticulture, and this gave me a basic grounding in aspects of botany and soil science and the different processes that plants go through so that they can grow. I also majored in ornamental gardening, actually got a prize for being the top student in the country for that year. After 7 years working for municipal authorities, I then worked for a produce company. I was responsible for advising market gardeners and orchardists on the nurturing and growing of crops, and also the harvesting and exporting of those crops. And so I learnt a lot going around those different properties, market gardens for example, or truck farms as you would call them in the United States. I also became friends with some of those people, and they're still friends to this day, and so that is part of my learning. I have to say that the different skills that I've learnt through orchards, market gardens, parks, they're not necessarily directly applicable to a small garden such as this one here, but you can still adapt the different processes into the gardening context, which was what I've always tried to do. Then for many years I worked as a horticultural lecturer for a tertiary education institution, and again I was teaching students the different principles that I'd learnt in my horticulture degree, and also in the context of the different jobs I'd had before there. And they do say that the best way to learn something is to teach it, so that sort of embedded my knowledge and skills. When that course was unfortunately closed, I was able to transition into teaching business because I had 2 master's degrees in business. As you can see, I have done quite a lot of qualifications over the years. I also did postgraduate studies in tertiary education, and you could say, well, that's nothing to do with gardening and horticulture, but a lot of the concepts that I've learned through topics such as project management, operations management, you can also apply them to gardening so that you're sure to do your gardening in an effective and efficient manner. And of course I use the teaching skills that I learned through my postgraduate qualification in tertiary education to how I devise these tips, so that I ensure that I go through a logical process and that I example everything as I go through. So that is the concept I apply to my tips. Around this time, my wife and myself purchased a 2-acre or 1 hectare property, which I developed into large-scale landscape gardens, and also of course orchards and vegetable growing. However, around this time my wife developed Parkinson's, and the property became inappropriate for us, So we sold it and we bought this property that you can see here. And I was quite comfortable with that because I feel that there are just as many opportunities with a domestic sized property in a suburban context as for a larger one. So the approach I bring in these tips is that gardening and landscaping concepts can be applied to any size property, whether it be a suburban section or an apartment with a terrace or just simply one with a living area. There are still wonderful things that you can do with your garden, and so I developed the garden that you can see here. And of course this is the property which I illustrate most of my tips. And modestly, I think I've done a pretty good job. It's like living in paradise here. And of course, very productive. I currently volunteer at an organic growing property which has a research program, and so I can apply my skills and also learn new ones there. I was for a very long time on the board of Botanic Gardens, and again I learned a lot from that situation and also from the other people on that board. And I have got a whole range of friends who are lifelong gardeners. Most of them are similar age to myself, and we get together and we can share ideas and practicalities about how we do our gardening. As this range of activities suggests, I'm a generalist, not a specialist. So I don't have deep knowledge about specific aspects of gardening, but I have a practical knowledge across a wide range of activities, and also an holistic approach. So when I developed my previous property, or this one, I tried to make sure that I applied the different principles that I discussed in my 0.0 video. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching it through to the end, and I look forward to comments from you in relation to this video and also to the different tips that I have available. So thanks for sharing this journey with me.